You're in a meeting. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence, and before you even realize it, the words tumble out, "Sorry, I was just saying." Or you decline an invitation you genuinely can't attend, and you find yourself apologizing 3 times in one text message. "Sorry, I can't make it. Sorry for the late reply. Sorry if this disappoints you." Wait, what are you actually sorry for? Existing? Having boundaries? Making a choice? Here's the thing. Apologizing is a social lubricant. It smooths over friction, acknowledges mistakes, and repairs relationships. But somewhere along the way, a lot of us learn to apologize reflexively, not because we did something wrong, but because we were taught that taking up space, having needs, or asserting ourselves might offend someone. And that's where it gets dangerous, because when you over-apologize, especially for things that don't warrant an apology, you're not being polite, you're telegraphing something far more costly, that you don't believe you deserve the space you occupy. You're signaling weakness, not in your character, but in your sense of self-worth. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on 5 things you should never, ever apologize for, not because you're becoming arrogant or inconsiderate, but because reclaiming these spaces is how you signal confidence, self-respect, and emotional maturity. Stick around. By the end of this, you might just rewrite the script you've been running your whole life. Let's start with the big one. Never apologize for setting boundaries. Picture this. A coworker slides into your DMs at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. "Hey, can you look over this report real quick?" You're already in your pajamas, halfway through a show, decompressing from the week. But instead of saying, "I'll take a look Monday morning," you feel that familiar tug of guilt. So you type, "Sorry, I'm off the clock tonight." Wait, why are you sorry? You're not canceling plans. You're not letting anyone down. You're simply not working when you're not being paid to work. Revolutionary, right? Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. They're not walls meant to keep people out. They're guidelines that say, "This is where I end and you begin." But here's the psychology behind why so many of us apologize when we set them. We've been conditioned to believe that saying no makes us selfish, difficult, or unkind. Especially if you're someone who was raised to prioritize others' comfort over your own, or if you've ever been punished for asserting yourself, you might carry a deep-seated fear that boundaries equal rejection. But let me tell you what actually happens when you apologize for setting a boundary. You undermine it. You send a mixed message. "I'm saying no, but I feel bad about it, so maybe if you push a little harder, I'll cave." And people pick up on that. Not because they're manipulative, though some are, but because you've essentially told them your boundary is negotiable. When you set a boundary without apologizing, you're communicating something powerful. I respect myself, and I trust that you'll respect me too. No drama, no guilt, just clarity. Think of it like this. If someone asks to borrow your car and you say, "Sorry, I don't lend out my car," versus "I don't lend out my car," which one sounds more solid? The second one, right? Because it doesn't invite negotiation. It's a statement, not an apology. Maybe you're the person who's always available, always saying yes, always accommodating. And maybe, deep down, you're exhausted. If that's you, this is your permission slip. You don't owe anyone an apology for taking care of yourself. Not your boss, not your family, not your friends. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. And the people who truly value you, they'll respect them. Then there's this one. Never apologize for your success or achievements. You just got promoted, or you landed a client you've been chasing for months, or you finished a project you're genuinely proud of. Someone asks how things are going, and instead of saying, "Amazing, actually, I just got promoted," you downplay it. "Oh yeah, I got a little bump at work. It's not a big deal. I just got lucky, really." Or worse, "Sorry, I don't mean to brag, but I got the award." Stop, right there. Why are you apologizing for winning? This pattern is rooted in something psychologists call tall poppy syndrome, the cultural tendency to cut down anyone who rises above the rest. In some environments, especially if you grew up in a place where modesty was prized above all else, you might have learned that celebrating yourself makes others uncomfortable. So you learned to shrink, to minimize, to apologize for shining. But here's what that actually does. It doesn't make you humble, it makes you invisible. When you apologize for your success, you're reinforcing a belief to yourself and others that you don't fully deserve it, that it was a fluke, that you're somehow taking something away from someone else by doing well. And that's just not how success works. Your promotion doesn't take a promotion away from someone else. Your win doesn't erase someone else's effort. There's also a gendered element to this. Studies show that women in particular are more likely to downplay achievements or preface accomplishments with apologies or disclaimers. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I got the award. Meanwhile, men in the same studies are more likely to claim credit confidently, even for collaborative work. Neither approach is right in a moral sense, but one signals confidence and the other signals insecurity. And let's be honest, if someone feels uncomfortable with your success, that's a them problem, not a you problem. People who are secure in themselves can celebrate others without feeling threatened. The ones who can't, they're working through their own stuff. Comparison, envy, scarcity mindset, and you apologizing won't fix that. In fact, it might just validate their belief that you don't deserve it either. So the next time you achieve something, big or small, own it. Say it out loud. I worked hard for this and I'm proud. No apologies, no caveats, just truth. Because confidence isn't arrogance. Confidence is knowing your worth and not shrinking to make others comfortable. Here's a sneaky one that trips people up. Never apologize for your feelings or emotions. Sorry, I'm being too sensitive. Sorry, I'm overreacting. Sorry, I'm upset about this. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like that? Maybe someone dismissed your concerns, and instead of standing firm, you apologized for having them in the first place. Maybe you cried in an argument, and you immediately said, "Sorry, I don't know why I'm crying." Let's unpack this. Emotions are not a design flaw. They're information. Anger tells you a boundary's been crossed. Sadness tells you something mattered to you. Fear tells you to pay attention. When you apologize for feeling what you feel, you're essentially saying, my internal experience is an inconvenience to you, and I'm sorry for burdening you with my humanity. That's bleak, right? This pattern often comes from environments where emotions were weaponized or invalidated. Maybe you grew up in a house where expressing sadness or anger was met with, "Stop being dramatic," or "You're too sensitive." Maybe you were in a relationship where your partner labeled your feelings as crazy or irrational. Over time, you internalized the message that your emotional responses are wrong, excessive, or embarrassing. So now you apologize for them preemptively, hoping to diffuse criticism before it lands. But here's the truth bomb. Apologizing for your feelings doesn't protect you. It just teaches people that your emotions are negotiable, that they can be dismissed, minimized, or ignored. And worse, it disconnects you from your own internal compass. Because if you're constantly second-guessing whether you're allowed to feel what you feel, you lose touch with what actually matters to you. Now, to be clear, having feelings doesn't give you a free pass to behave badly. You can feel angry without yelling at someone. You can feel hurt without lashing out. Emotional maturity isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about expressing them responsibly. But expressing them doesn't require an apology. You can say, "I'm upset about what happened," without adding, "Sorry, I know I'm being dramatic." You can say, "This hurt my feelings," without apologizing for the fact that you have feelings. And if someone responds to your honest emotional expression with dismissal or mockery, that's a red flag about them, not about you. Healthy people can hold space for emotions, theirs and others, without making it a referendum on someone's worth. So the next time you feel something deeply, resist the urge to apologize for it. Just feel it, name it, and trust that your emotional experience is valid, even if someone else doesn't understand it. Let's talk about time. Never apologize for needing time to yourself. You've been running all week. Work, social obligations, family demands, errands, everyone wants a piece of you. Finally, it's Saturday. You've got nothing on the calendar. Just you, some peace and quiet, maybe a book or a walk or absolutely nothing. And then the text comes in. "Hey, want to grab brunch?" And your stomach drops.
Not because you don't like this person, but because you desperately need to recharge. So you type back, "Sorry, I'm not available today. I need some alone time." And immediately you feel guilty, like you're letting them down, like you're being socially awkward or selfish. But the reality is, solitude is not selfishness, it's maintenance. Especially if you're an introvert or a highly sensitive person, being around others, even people you love, drains your battery. And if you don't recharge, you burn out. You become irritable, resentful, disconnected. You start showing up as a hollow version of yourself because you've given everything away and left nothing for you. The psychology here ties into something called social fatigue. Your brain uses a ton of energy when you're interacting with others, reading facial expressions, modulating tone, managing impressions, responding to emotional cues. That's exhausting, and it's not a character flaw.
It's just how human brains work. Some people recharge through social interaction. Others recharge through solitude. Neither is better, they're just different. But if you're someone who needs alone time, you might have internalized the message that needing space makes you weird, cold, or unfriendly. Especially in a culture that glorifies busyness and constant connection, taking time for yourself can feel almost rebellious. So you apologize for it, hoping to soften the blow. "Sorry, I'm being a hermit this weekend." But apologizing for needing time alone sends a message to yourself and others that your needs are an inconvenience. It frames solitude as something to be excused rather than honored. And that's dangerous, because over time you'll start skipping the alone time. You'll say yes when you mean no, and you'll wonder why you feel so drained all the time. Here's the reframe. Needing time to yourself is not a flaw, it's a requirement. You wouldn't apologize for needing sleep, right? Solitude is the same. It's how you restore balance, clarity, and energy. And the people who care about you, they'll understand. They might even respect you more for knowing yourself well enough to advocate for what you need. So next time someone invites you somewhere and you're running on empty, try this. "I appreciate the invite, but I need some downtime today." No sorry, no guilt, just honesty. Because taking care of yourself isn't something to apologize for, it's something to prioritize. And finally, never apologize for outgrowing people, places, or versions of yourself. Maybe you have a friend from high school. You've known each other forever, but lately, when you hang out, the conversation feels stale. They're still rehashing the same drama, complaining about the same things, stuck in the same patterns, and you've moved on. You've changed. You're interested in different things now. You've done the work, therapy, self-reflection, growth, and the gap between who you were and who you are now feels enormous. So you start to pull back, not out of cruelty, but out of alignment. And then the guilt creeps in. Maybe I'm being a bad friend. Maybe I should just suck it up. Sorry, I've been distant lately. I don't know what's wrong with me. But here's the thing. Nothing's wrong with you. You're evolving, and growth is not betrayal. Human beings are not static. We're supposed to change. Our values shift, our priorities evolve, our understanding of the world deepens. And sometimes that means we outgrow relationships that no longer serve us. That doesn't make you a snob or a traitor. It makes you someone who's committed to their own development. And apologizing for that growth, either to yourself or to others, keeps you tethered to a version of yourself that no longer exists. The psychology behind this ties to something called identity foreclosure, when you commit to an identity or set of relationships early in life and then feel guilty for changing later. You might think, "But I've always been the loyal friend," or "I'm supposed to stay connected to these people." And those thoughts keep you stuck because they're based on who you were, not who you're becoming. There's also a fear element. If you let go of old relationships or old versions of yourself, who will you be? Will you be alone? Will you lose your sense of identity? Those are real fears. But holding on to relationships out of guilt or obligation doesn't ease them. It just delays the inevitable.
And in the meantime, you're living in misalignment, pretending to be someone you're not just to keep the peace. Here's the reframe. Outgrowing people is not personal, it's natural. And the right people for this season of your life, they're out there. But you won't find them if you're still clinging to the wrong ones. This doesn't mean you have to ghost people or be cruel. You can be kind and honest. You can honor what the relationship was without forcing it to be something it's no longer. And you can do all of that without apologizing. Because here's the truth. You don't owe anyone access to a version of yourself that no longer exists. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to want different things. You're allowed to walk away from spaces, people, and identities that don't fit anymore. That's not weakness. That's courage. So here's where we land. Apologizing when you've genuinely hurt someone or made a mistake, that's accountability. That's maturity. But apologizing for taking up space, for having needs, for being human, that's conditioning, and it's costing you more than you think. Every time you apologize unnecessarily, you're reinforcing a belief that you're too much, not enough, or fundamentally flawed. You're training people to expect less of you and more from you, and you're training yourself to shrink. But what if you stopped? What if you set that boundary without the sorry? What if you owned your success, honored your feelings, claimed your time, and released what no longer serves you, all without apology? What would that version of you look like? How would that version of you feel? So here's my question for you. Which of these 5 hit home? Are you the chronic apologizer who says sorry for existing? Or are you already halfway there, reclaiming your space one boundary at a time? Drop a comment and let me know. And if this resonated, if you felt a little seen or a little challenged, consider subscribing, because we're just getting started on this journey of understanding the psychology behind who we are and who we're becoming. Thanks for being here. Now go take up some space. You've earned it.